Hello, Mallards. It is Thursday, and jury duty is finally over. We did the verdict today. We did deliberation. We reached a verdict. The jury actually found the defendant guilty on for both things he was charged with. The case involved stalking and harassment in the first degree, stalking of an ex and harassment of a jailer at the county jail. And here are the things that I have to say about this trial now that I could talk a little more in depth. So in this trial, the defendant decided to be his own lawyer. Don't ever do that. Ever. Do not. I know you want to. Don't. Don't. Stop. It's a bad idea. Don't do it. Really, really don't do it. And especially don't do it if you don't understand how trials work. Which he did not. At all. We got to closing arguments and he was like, let me tell you about this evidence and this evidence and this evidence. And the lawyer for the prosecution objected during his closing statement, which, like, I didn't even think was a thing. I didn't think you could object during a closing statement. Turns out maybe you can. To say you cannot read from that because it's not an evidence, because he, like, tried to submit all this stuff as evidence and the prosecution objected to it for good reason. And then the judge sustained, which means it's not an evidence, which means the jury is never going to see whatever this document was. But he, like, tried to read it when he was on the stand in closing statements. And he was like, what do you mean? I submitted it for evidence. And he was like, right, but it wasn't accepted into evidence. And he was like, well, it has a letter on it. We're like, yeah, because you label it beforehand so that it has a label to refer to. That doesn't mean it's been accepted as evidence. And so, like, I realized he just, like, and I thought he perhaps hadn't understood it when it was actively happening. But it became glaringly obvious that he really didn't understand it at all. Like, at all. And really didn't understand how to get something accepted as evidence, because he probably did have some things that could have been accepted as evidence if he'd understood, like, how to establish what they were, who knew about them, and how they were relevant to the case. But that's the other part of it. So I don't think he understood my role as a juror, or the role of a jury in general. And he asked for a jury trial instead of, like, doing a plea or just having a trial with a judge, right? He was like, no, I want a jury trial. And I think maybe he understood, like, it would be easier to, like, talk to a group of people. He felt like he'd been abused by the system and therefore, like, thought a judge would be unfair, but, like, a jury of his peers might be more fair. I understand that, I guess, if you, like, really think the system is against you. But my job is to decide if the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that you committed a crime. Okay? That's what they have to prove, that you did it. Now, you don't have to prove that you didn't do it. You're the defendant. You don't have to prove anything. But you really don't do yourself any favors if your argument, instead of being like, let me poke holes in you saying I did this by showing how maybe that isn't true, you're like, let me tell you why I did these things. And his entire defense was like, here's my motivation. And that's not how it works, dude. Your motivation doesn't matter, because I'm not judging your motivation. I don't care if you had a good reason. I'm judging whether or not you committed a crime. And you were basically like, yeah, I did that, but I had a good reason. I mean, if anything, I could say that the state didn't prove things because he just said them himself. But it was downhill pretty fast. rapidly. Our whole first day of trial was just the direct and cross-examination of his ex, the one he is accused of stalking. And that didn't feel like I was in a trial. It felt like I was watching a domestic argument between a couple that for some reason was happening in a courtroom. And I really think that maybe the state's lawyer just like gave up trying to object. He like got to this point where he was like, well, I guess the good news is he's off the rails in a direction that doesn't really affect my trial because he's talking about things that have been stolen, which has nothing to do with anything I am doing in this trial. So whatever, let him talk. So we spent the whole day doing that. Anyway, that's why I had so much fun as a juror, because I was experiencing a pretty unique trial. It is a rarity for somebody to represent themselves. And apparently it never goes well. So don't do it. Don't do it. I could have done better. I still wouldn't represent myself, even though I like have some confidence in my ability to like understand what's happening in a trial, because I did mock trial for years. I loved it. Oh. And because I'm really interested in the process and I'm really interested in like how trial happens. But I don't want to like I said, the reason I'm not a lawyer is because I don't want to do all the before work. I wouldn't want to do all the before work in this case either. So don't represent yourself, friends. And also a reminder that in a trial, we care about whether or not you did the crime, not why. Your motivation doesn't matter at all. Okay? So when in doubt, just say nothing. Don't ask if there's an audio recording or a video recording of the crime you committed and then ask to see it like this guy did. Just think about things a little bit. That's all I ask. Anyway, I had a great time. I did find out at the end that apparently you're like off the hook for jury duty for 2 years. I'm a little sad about that because I'd go back. I'd do another trial. If I get called, I won't tell them that I recently had jury duty. I'll just be like, no, I didn't do that because I want to do it again. So yeah, that's 8 minutes of being in small town court and I will see you tomorrow.